And
Thank
it's
you.
time to shift gears a little bit and talk about quality in phase one units. And I think, Thomas, that's your topic because you are very experienced with quality and managing your own company at kosieradzki.com, I believe, uh, providing
Yes.
QA and auditing services. So with that, Thomas, show us how you can make quality interesting to all of us.
Okay, Ronald, thank you very much. Yes, indeed, I started my own company, but yes, I will talk about the quality. The problem with the quality is that it doesn't really, it shouldn't be affected by any situations, and even with the COVID. That's why I will go through more general elements. But talking about COVID and phase one, let's start with the first element. And let's go to back to the discussion about phase one itself. What really phase one is, and why we are talking about what is special about phase one. And phase one, as we all know, that's an only part of the steps to the marketing authorization that is coming after the development and the preclinical, of course. And this phase one studies, I usually like a little bit more to talk about early development, because this is a phase one study might be only the one of the kinds of this phase of the studies that are at the beginning, but in general, that's what is most important. Then is what really does it mean about phase one? This is the kind of a repetition from a general consideration in clinical trials, previous version, but it shows very well what is the phase one early development about. And this is the human pharmacology, and doesn't really matter which kind of the study we are talking about. If we talk about the early development, we should take into consideration, first of all the elements that should be related to any trial. But talking about phase one, and the quality is the topic of this presentation, but then we need also to define somehow the quality. Usually we feel what the quality is, but this is just a pure equation, where in the denominator we have nothing more than the question, or basically the answer to the questions: what would we like to have? What should be the, let's say, desired status? And sometimes this desired status is slightly different from this expectation. And this difference is exactly the difference in the quality, or the quality problems are popping here. And this is exactly what would we have. That's one part of this quality elements. And then what we really what we have, that's another part. But then going back to the phase one, how should we discuss the phase one trials is something, and the quality that's nothing extraordinary in the comparison to the other trials, unless basically one significant element that for the phase one trials we have the first time for a regular phase one, first in human. This is the first IMP related issue with the human body, and how this relates, how this goes together. Let's go through the case that is quite well known to everybody involved in the phase one, but I know that some of the audience is not really phase one focused. And for this case, it was a Northwick Park case a few years ago, happened in UK. and it was related to the, of course, commercial phase unit, par excellence phase unit, one of the, I can really say, one of the best, and why I will explain this later on. First in human trial with the antibody that was designed to modulate the immunologic system, and this trial was started with 8 subjects. 2 were the placebo, and 6 got this TGN 1412 entity, which caused an immunologic storm. This immunologic storm, the symptoms were really bad, because there for 6 of the subjects, some symptoms developed that really cause that they should be treated not in the ICH but ICU treatment was required. And now the requirement for the phase 1 is in some guidelines that the unit should be in close correlation to the hospital and to the ICU treatment. And this is exactly the case and example why, because at that time the Northwick Hospital, it was an NHS hospital in the same location when the phase 1 unit was, and they had unfortunately only one ICU bed, and 6 subjects were affected, but they managed. Finally, they managed, and of course, there were no deadly victims. However, some severe diseases or severe outcome was also visible. Why it is? Oh, sorry. I went through the wrong. The problem is that in phase 1, sometimes you have to manage the unexpected. If you need some more literature on that, that's available too. But phase 1 quality we need to discuss in comparison to where the phase 1 unit is placed. Some phase 1 units are in the hospital setup, and they are basically dedicated to the clinical trials that could be not phase 1 could be not performed with the healthy volunteers, with the patients. And also another setup, which is, for example, the Biokinetica case, or this clinical pharmacology unit, is dedicated phase 1 unit. And what is really important, that there are similar setups, and for the quality, it's very important what we really should expect in terms of this requirements. What would we like to have? And this is the basics for the quality in phase 1. Of course, the question is how we should find the requirements. And we have several levels of requirements for every clinical trial. That's what we discussed today, of course, the ethical requirements like Declaration of Helsinki. And then we have also the legal level of the requirements, and but also the industry level. And today we discussed these requirements for COVID-specific situations that were issued from the regulatory authorities, but also from different type of industry associations or industry entities. And this was the denominator part of this quality element. That means what we should do was described in that requirements. Of course, also on the level of the organization, our quality management systems defined how the phase 1 trials, especially in this difficult time, should be performed. And of course, study design is also a level of the requirements that we should take into considerations. This is exactly the denominator of this quotation, and let's have a question, discuss the questions. If if we have any phase 1 specific legal requirements for the sites. And discussing the quality, we need to find out what is expected from the regulatory perspective. And in majority of countries, even non-COVID related situations, the expectation for phase one are not very strict. There are in some countries requirements that phase one units should be led by a clinical pharmacologist, but in general, that's not a common approach. And you will not find in majorities of EU countries any requirements, specific requirements dedicated to phase one units, to phase one entities, or to early development entities in general. However, not really that's the true, because we have some guidelines, and of course we have EMA guidelines, which is a general one, because it is mainly dedicated to the design of the clinical trials in early development, but not really how the investigator side, the phase one unit, should be organized. Of course, we have a chapter here, but as you can see, it's only 2 pages, and it's not really a very big one. And for the quality, from the quality perspective, is a little bit too many, that's too few details how this kind of entity for phase one for early development should be set up. Of course, there are some requirements but these are quite similar to the other phases, at least at the beginning. Of course, qualified personnel, that is something prerequisite. And the people should be trained, but not only on the general things, but also they should be trained on this particular phase. Of course, the setup of the clinical trial should be organized in that way that the subjects during the dosing should be under control. And this is why phase one units are designed in that way. And why they are so different from the phase two, phase three clinical sites. And of course, the level of the equipment and the attention that is used for the equipment, not only for the equipment that is used for the data collection, but also for the potential managing of the problems. As we have seen this Northwick Park issue, this site was very well equipped with a lot of good equipment related to that. And of course, there is an expectation that such clinical site is in a correlation to the intensive care unit. And this is very important expectations, and for that you will not find something similar for the other clinical sites. That's why this requirement is really important for auditors, for the people who are dealing with phase one. Another example of not a really legal requirement is the MHRA system. What is it? After this Northwick Park, MHRA set up different changes in the phase one early development environment, and one of them was implementation of the phase one accreditation scheme for the at the beginning. For the commercial phase one units, it was dedicated mainly for the phase one unit that are purely commercial. However, last edition also maybe not allows, because it is still not mandatory requirement, but somehow promotes also this accreditation to the NHS and regular hospital setups. What is it? The MHRA scheme covers a lot of different elements that are not addressed in other guidelines, referential documents. Why it is important? Because here you can find exactly the description of the expectation for phase one. If you want to talk about the quality, if you want to assess the quality of your vendor, then you definitely need this background, this basis, these references for phase one. This is something absolutely important. I'm talking here about the legal requirements. However, please take into consideration that these are MHRA. First of all, UK is no more EU, of course, and then, but this is also not a requirement that is mandatory. I will later explain why this why this differentiation is important. And of course, we have some phase one dedicated requirements that are from the industry perspective important, and the most important and the well known is ABPI guideline on phase one. This is a kind of a prerequisite for every clinical phase one unit, and however, during my different auditing, I came across phase one units that didn't accept this ABPI guidelines fully. What you can do as a sponsor, for example, or a CRO contracting this type of unit, I will tell you at the end of this presentation. This is the third edition of these guidelines. Here, they are not very different from each other. There are some differences, but still they are all covering all elements related to phase one requirements. Another case related to the phase one clinic, I've audited a phase one unit that even in age was announced as a phase one, not any other type of early development. This was titled phase one unit. But during the audit, I came across the situations that the resuscitation kits and the trolleys, they were completely disorganized. There was not there was no equipment at all that was really useful, and this was moreover threatening thing was that the personnel was really not able to tell me why they are using this or this type of equipment, and why they don't have this equipment in one place. That means, for example, the medication was closed in another cupboard, not together with the resuscitation set, and was widespread across big cupboard completely with no intention to be used in a quick, expedient way, which was really threatened, considering the title of the and the name of the unit, phase one unit. That's mean unknown might happen, like in this Parexel case. And what was more challenging, it was also to discuss the resuscitation and the emergency training at this unit. ABPI guidelines is quite strict on that element, and this requirement should be fulfilled for every phase one unit. And contracting the phase one unit, you should always remember that something like bad might happen, and then you need a partner who is really in charge and in really prepared to manage this kind of unexpected things. The question is if all phase one units should fulfill the requirements. Definitely not. That's always depends on what you really need. What is the purpose of your trial? If you really have more bioequivalence study with a solid medication that is already well known, but you have a new indication of it, and but in general the pharmacology is well known, established, and the safety profile of this IMP is well known, maybe this kind of setup might be a little bit exaggerated. But as we discussed in this Northwick Park think with the number of biosimilars and immunomodulant entities coming to the market, probably this setup is more appropriate for this type of medications. Of course, there are different other types of phase one units. This depends on the level of the risk benefit relationship. And of course, still there is a place for phase one units that are, let's say, more less intense, less, of course, also costly for the sponsor. But everything is related to the way how you manage. Uh, how you ensure that the quality in phase one is appropriate. First of all, you have to decide what is your expectations, because there are no universal regulatory expectations and requirements for phase one units. That's on the sponsor, on the CRO who is contracting phase one units, on how to define these requirements. And I always recommend, maybe recommend is too strong, but enhance the people who are dealing with the contracts for phase one units to put this type of reference, like a BPI guideline or the MHRA accreditation scheme, as a separate referential document, or even to create a separate requirement to this kind of contract. It might be difficult and challenging in some cases, especially if you are in a big hurry for signing the contract. And also from the phase one units, at least some of them might be a little bit pushback in that terms. But in general, if you go through the good phase one unit, you will always find this understanding that the ABPI and accreditation scheme should be somehow be taken into considerations. And then what is important and what is the main message of this presentation is to take that you as a sponsor and or the CRO that has this obligation from the sponsor to ensure the quality management system and the level of expectation is on you. That's why. And for the sponsor CRO, few points to take all from today's presentation is that first of all you need to think what you really need. That is something that fit to purpose is really good to know. And then you need to know the requirements. What are the legal requirements? What are the general, and how they fit into your contract? How they link with your contract? That's really important. Make the contract as detailed as needed. That's a fit to purpose idea. Of course, that because this later on, this is your own tool that you might be using for assessing the real life quality of this entity. And audit the sites before the contract and is signed. It's much better than if you do this in a rather other way around, and you first sign the contract and later you have the problem with the quality requirements, because some sites might not accept what you really want to be accepted from the requirements perspective. And but also I have few points for the sites, for the phase one sites, if they want to follow. Design your site to the particular types of IMP. If you are focused on biosimilars, immunological things, you really need to be on a high level from the safety and perspective and the equipment requirements. Of course, everything should be described and covered with the quality management system. This is a general ICH requirement, and this is still valid for the phase one. And of course, train your staff not only in the GCP. How is happening sometimes on the phase 2-3 trials. Then emergency situations, mock training is absolutely important, and verify your quality management systems and training. That is absolutely important. But if you don't know as a sponsor of, if you have your own entity site phase one unit, how to assess the quality, you can always call the specialist. And that was it. Thank you very much for the time. Sorry for being a little bit too long with my presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tomasz. It's very comfortable to see that we can always call you.